Suzanne Reynolds stared at a faded document in her father's Chicago office, her world unraveling. "You lied," she whispered, learning her adoption hid a dark secret tied to their family firm. Betrayed by those she trusted, Suzanne faced a choice: expose the truth and risk everything, or stay silent. In a high-stakes legal battle, could she win justice and reclaim her identity? There is one detail that only the attentive notice. Noticed? Subscribe. Don't miss something interesting. Suzanne Reynolds stood in the sleek, high-rise office of Reynolds & Clark, Chicago's most prestigious law firm, her pulse racing as she clutched a faded document that threatened to upend her life. At 32, Suzanne was a Yale-educated lawyer with a reputation for razor-sharp arguments and unshakable resolve. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun, her tailored gray suit a testament to her professionalism. The Chicago skyline sparkled through the glass walls, but the room felt suffocating, charged with the weight of a secret her father, Robert Reynolds, had just revealed. "You lied to me," Suzanne whispered, her voice trembling as she stared at Robert across his polished oak desk. The document in her hands, an original birth certificate, listed a stranger's name under mother, not Elizabeth Reynolds, the woman who'd raised her. "I'm adopted and you never told me." "Why?" Robert, his silver hair catching the dim light, sat rigidly, his hands clasped tightly. At 60, he was the patriarch of Reynolds & Clark, a man whose name opened doors across the city. But now, his blue eyes flickered with guilt. "Suzanne," he said, his voice low, "we thought it was best. Your mother, Elizabeth, wanted to tell you when you were older, but after she passed—" He trailed off, glancing at the framed photo of Elizabeth on his desk, her warm smile a stark contrast to the tension in the room. Suzanne's chest tightened. Elizabeth had died 5 years ago, her laughter and gentle hugs a fading memory. She'd been Suzanne's anchor, the one who'd cheered her through late-night study sessions and celebrated her law school graduation. Robert, though, had always been distant, his approval conditional on perfection. Now, this revelation shattered the foundation of her identity. "Best?" Suzanne snapped, her voice rising. "You hid my entire origin from me, and this—" She thrust the certificate forward, pointing to the unfamiliar name, Lisa Harper. "Who is she? Why am I only finding out now?" Robert sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's complicated, Suzanne. We adopted you when you were a baby. Elizabeth couldn't have unofficial sources. Lisa was your biological mother. We wanted to give you a stable home, a good life. Telling you now, on your 32nd birthday, was my way of being honest." Suzanne's mind reeled. Her 32nd birthday was supposed to be a milestone. Partners at Lawson and Pierce, the rival firm where she worked, had toasted her promotion just last week. But this truth cast everything in a new light. "Honest?" she said, her voice sharp. "You've had 32 years to be honest. Why today?" Before Robert could answer, the office door swung open, and Lucas Reynolds strode in, all charm and arrogance. At 27, Suzanne's brother was the golden child of Reynolds & Clark, despite his mediocre legal skills and penchant for flashy suits. His dark hair was slicked back, a smug grin on his face. "What's the family drama now?" he asked, glancing between them. "Suzanne, you look like you've seen a ghost." Suzanne's jaw tightened. Lucas had always been Robert's favorite, handed opportunities she'd had to claw for. "This doesn't concern you," she said coldly, but Lucas's eyes flicked to the document in her hand. "Oh, secrets coming out?" he teased, leaning against the desk. "Dad, you finally told her about the adoption, about time." Suzanne froze, her gaze snapping to Lucas. "You knew?" Her voice was a low growl, betrayal cutting deeper. Lucas shrugged, unfazed. "Figured it out years ago. Didn't think it mattered." His casual dismissal stung, but Suzanne's focus shifted back to Robert. "There's more, isn't there?" she pressed, sensing the hesitation in her father's eyes. "What else are you hiding?" Robert's face paled, and for a moment, silence hung heavy. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. The adoption, it wasn't entirely legal. There were arrangements made through the firm to protect you. Suzanne's breath caught. Arrangements? Reynolds and Clark was a pillar of Chicago's legal world, its reputation spotless. The idea of illicit dealings was unthinkable. What kind of arrangements? She demanded, her lawyer's instincts kicking in. Robert averted his gaze. It's in the past, Suzanne. Let it go. But Suzanne couldn't let it go. The document in her hand wasn't just a personal betrayal. It hinted at a professional one. If Reynolds and Clark had facilitated an illegal adoption, what else had they done? Her mind raced, connecting dots to cases she'd overheard as a child, whispers of special clients and closed-door meetings. She'd dismissed them as office gossip, but now they felt like clues. I deserve the truth, she said, stepping closer, her voice steel. All of it. Robert stood, his posture defensive. You're emotional, Suzanne. We'll talk later. For now, go home. Process this. Lucas smirked, clearly enjoying the tension. Yeah, sis, don't make a scene. You're not even a real Reynolds, technically. The words hit like a slap, but Suzanne refused to flinch. I'm more a Reynolds than you'll ever be, she shot back, her eyes blazing. She turned to Robert. This isn't over. I'll find out what you're hiding, with or without your help. Storming out, Suzanne's heels echoed on the marble floor, her mind a whirlwind. Back at her apartment that night, she pored over the birth certificate, the name Lisa Harper burning into her memory. A quick search on her laptop yielded nothing, no records, no social media. Whoever Lisa was, she'd been erased. But why? The next morning, Suzanne arrived at Lawson & Pierce, her focus razor-sharp. Her boss, Thomas Lawson, a mentor with a knack for high-stakes cases, greeted her in his corner office. You look like you're on a mission, he said, his gray eyes keen. I am, Suzanne replied, hesitating only a moment before confiding in him. She trusted Thomas. He'd championed her career when others doubted her. I just found out I'm adopted, and I think my family's firm might be hiding something illegal about it. Thomas leaned forward, his expression grave. That's a serious accusation, Suzanne. If Reynolds and Clark bent the law, there could be records. But digging into this will put you in their crosshairs. Are you sure? Suzanne nodded, her resolve unshaken. I need to know who I am. And if they broke the law, I need to make it right. Thomas studied her, then nodded. All right, start discreetly. Old case files, public records. I'll back you, but tread carefully. Your father's got powerful friends. As Suzanne left his office, she bumped into Hannah Pierce, a junior lawyer with a quick smile and sharper mind. Heard you're chasing something big, Hannah whispered, her eyes gleaming. Need a research partner? Suzanne hesitated. Hannah was eager but untested. Still, an ally could be useful. Maybe, Suzanne said. Keep it quiet for now. Back at her desk, Suzanne began her search, pulling adoption laws and cross-referencing Reynolds and Clark's public filings. Hours later, a cryptic email landed in her inbox. No sender, just a scanned ledger page. It listed payments labeled consulting fees to an unfamiliar name, Harper Consulting, the same surname as her biological mother. Suzanne's pulse quickened. This wasn't random, it was a lead. But who sent it, and why? Before she could process it, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. The threat sent a chill down her spine, but it only fueled her determination. Someone was watching, and they were scared. Suzanne saved the email and text, her lawyer's instincts screaming the truth was close, and she wouldn't stop until she uncovered it. But as she glanced around the bustling office, a new question gnawed at her. Who could she really trust? Suzanne Reynolds sat at her desk in the bustling office of Lawson & Pierce, the glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across her face. The cryptic email with the ledger page, listing payments to Harper Consulting, burned in her mind, as did the chilling text. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. Chicago's skyline loomed outside, its lights flickering like a warning, but Suzanne's resolve was ironclad. At 32, she'd faced tough cases before. But this was personal. Her adoption, her identity, and possibly her family's firm, Reynolds and Clark, were tangled in a web of deceit she was determined to unravel. She glanced at the birth certificate again, the name Lisa Harper taunting her. Was Harper Consulting a front? A payoff for her adoption? Suzanne's lawyer instincts screamed that the answers lay in Reynolds and Clark's records, but accessing them without raising alarms would be tricky. Her father, Robert Reynolds, and brother Lucas were already on edge after their confrontation. She needed a plan and an ally. Hannah Pierce, the junior lawyer who'd offered help, popped into her mind. Hannah's enthusiasm could be an asset, but Suzanne hesitated. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not with anonymous threats lurking. Still, she needed someone to dig through public records while she focused on the firm. She texted Hannah, "Meet me in the archive room, 8 p.m. discreet." Hannah's reply was instant. "I'm in." As the office emptied, Suzanne met Hannah in the dimly lit archive room surrounded by shelves of case files. Hannah's blonde ponytail bounced as she leaned in, her voice a whisper. "So, what's the big secret? You're chasing something juicy, right?" Suzanne studied her, weighing her sincerity. "It's about my family's firm," she said carefully. "I think they hid something about my adoption. I need you to search public adoption records from 32 years ago, anything tied to Reynolds and Clark or Lisa Harper. Can you handle that?" Hannah's eyes widened, but she nodded. "Absolutely. I'll keep it quiet. You sure you're okay? This sounds heavy." "I'll manage," Suzanne said, forcing a tight smile. "Just don't tell anyone, not even Lawson." Hannah gave a mock salute. "My lips are sealed." Back at her apartment that night, Suzanne pored over the ledger page, cross-referencing names and dates. Harper Consulting had no online presence, but the payments, hundreds of thousands, were routed through a shell company linked to Reynolds and Clark's top client, Midland Enterprises. Midland was a real estate giant with a history of shady deals, and Robert had always bragged about their loyalty. Was Midland involved in her adoption? The thought made her stomach churn. Her phone buzzed, startling her. It was Thomas Lawson, her boss. "Suzanne, I got a tip," he said, his voice urgent. "Reynolds and Clark is pitching a massive merger with Midland tomorrow. If you're digging into their past, this could be leverage. Want me to pull strings for an invite?" Suzanne's pulse quickened. A merger meeting could expose financial trails. "Yes," she said. "Get me in." The next morning, Suzanne arrived at Reynolds and Clark's conference room, her presence unannounced. Robert's eyes narrowed as she entered, Lucas smirking beside him. Midland's CEO, a slick man named Victor Grayson, barely acknowledged her. The room buzzed with corporate jargon, but Suzanne's focus was on the documents projected on the screen, financials that could hide clues. During a break, she slipped into the records room, using an old access code from her intern days. Heart pounding, she scanned files labeled Midland Confidential. One folder, marked 1993, caught her eye, the year she was born. Inside was a contract, a payment to Harper Consulting for services rendered, signed by Robert and notarized by a lawyer she didn't recognize. A handwritten note in the margin read, "Adoption finalized. LH compensated." Suzanne's breath hitched. This was proof. Her adoption was a transaction, and Midland was involved. But before she could photograph it, the door creaked open. Lucas stood there, his grin gone. "Snooping, sis?" he said, his tone icy. "You're out of your depth." "You knew," Suzanne shot back, clutching the file. "You knew they paid off my biological mother." Lucas stepped closer, his voice low. "Drop this, Suzanne. You're not family, not really. Push this and you'll lose everything." The threat echoed the anonymous text, but Suzanne held her ground. "I'm not scared of you," she said, her voice steel. "I'll find the truth." Lucas's eyes darkened, but he backed off, leaving her shaken but determined. She snapped photos of the file and sent them to Hannah for safekeeping. Back at Lawson and Pierce, Hannah greeted her with news. "Found something," she whispered, handing Suzanne a printout. It was a 1993 court record, a sealed adoption case linked to Reynolds and Clark, with Lisa Harper listed as the birth mother. The judge's name was familiar, Judge Margaret Ellis, a close friend of Robert's. "This is huge," Suzanne said, her mind racing. Ellis's involvement suggested a cover-up at the highest levels. But before she could plan her next move, Mark Donovan, a senior colleague, approached her desk, his smile too polished. "Heard you're stirring trouble," Mark said, leaning in. "Careful, Suzanne. Reynolds and Clark plays dirty. You don't want to end up like their last whistleblower, disbarred and broke." Suzanne's blood ran cold. Mark was a mentor, someone she'd trusted. "What do you know about it?" she asked, her voice steady despite her unease. Mark shrugged, his eyes glinting. "Just saying, loyalty pays better than heroism?" He walked away, leaving Susan reeling. Was Mark involved? Had he sent the threatening text? That night, Suzanne met Hannah at a quiet cafe to strategize. "We need to go public," Hannah urged. "These documents could expose a major scandal." Suzanne hesitated. Going public meant burning bridges with her father and risking her career, but staying silent meant letting corruption fester. "Not yet," she said. "We need more, something undeniable." As they parted, Suzanne's phone pinged with another anonymous message. "Last warning. Drop it, or Lisa Harper's next." The mention of her biological mother sent a jolt through her. Lisa was alive, and in danger. Suzanne's search wasn't just about her identity anymore. It was about protecting someone she'd never met. But with Mark's warning and Lucas's threats, the walls were closing in. Who was pulling the strings? Midland, Robert, or someone closer? Suzanne Reynolds sat in her dimly lit apartment, the Chicago skyline a restless glow beyond her window. The latest anonymous text? Last warning. Drop it, or Lisa Harper's next, pulsed in her mind like a warning siren. Her biological mother, a woman she'd never met, was now a target, and Suzanne's quest for truth had turned dangerous. At 32, she'd faced ruthless opponents in court, but this was different. The stakes weren't just professional. They were deeply personal, threatening the fragile threads of her identity and family. The photos of the 1993 contract, linking her adoption to payments from Reynolds and Clark to Harper Consulting, weighed heavily. The court record Hannah Pierce had uncovered, sealed by Judge Margaret Ellis, a family ally, hinted at a cover-up orchestrated by her father, Robert Reynolds, and possibly Midland Enterprises. But Mark Donovan's cryptic warning about a disbarred whistleblower gnawed at her. Was he protecting her, or hiding his own role? Suzanne's trust, already frayed, was crumbling. She opened her laptop, pulling up the ledger page from the anonymous email. The payments to Harper Consulting coincided with her adoption, and Midland's name appeared repeatedly. Suzanne's gut told her Midland wasn't just a client. They were the key to unraveling the fraud. But confronting Robert or Lucas directly was too risky. They'd stonewall or worse. She needed hard evidence, and fast. Hannah Pierce was her only ally, but even that felt precarious. Suzanne texted her, "Meet me at the office midnight. Bring everything you've got." Hannah's reply was quick. "On it. Found something new. Big." Suzanne's pulse quickened. Hannah's knack for digging up obscure records was proving invaluable, but Suzanne couldn't shake the fear that someone was watching their every move. At midnight, the Lawson and Pierce office was eerily quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights the only sound. Hannah arrived, clutching a folder, her face pale but determined. "You won't believe this," she whispered, spreading documents across a conference table. "I hacked into an old county database. Don't ask how. Look." She pointed to a scanned letter from 1993, addressed to Robert Reynolds from a lawyer named Daniel Klein. It referenced a sensitive adoption and urged discretion to protect Midland's interests. Suzanne's breath caught. "Klein," she murmured. The name was familiar. Lucas had mentioned a retired partner who'd handled special cases. This was no coincidence. "What else?" she asked, her voice tight. Hannah slid over another document, a financial transfer memo. Midland funneled money through Harper Consulting to a private account in Lisa Harper's name. "It's not just your adoption, Suzanne. There's a pattern. Dozens of sealed adoptions, all tied to Reynolds and Clark and Midland, all around the same time." Suzanne's mind reeled. A pattern? Her adoption wasn't a one-off. It was part of a larger scheme. "They were trafficking babies," she said, the words bitter on her tongue, "using the firm to launder payments and cover it up." Hannah nodded, her eyes wide. "And Judge Ellis signed off on every case. She's in deep." The revelation hit like a tidal wave. But before Suzanne could process it, the conference room door swung open. Mark Donovan stood there, his polished demeanor replaced by a cold glare. "Late-night research, ladies," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "You're digging into things you don't understand." Suzanne's heart raced, but she stood her ground. "What's your angle, Mark? Are you working for Midland? Or my father?" Mark's lips curled into a smirk. "You're smart, Suzanne, but not smart enough. I tried to warn you." He stepped closer, his tone low. "Those documents? They'll disappear, along with your career, if you don't back off." Hannah clutched the folder, her voice shaky. "You can't scare us. We've got proof." Mark's eyes flicked to Hannah, then back to Suzanne. "Proof means nothing if you're discredited. Ask Klein. He tried to blow the whistle and ended up ruined." He paused, his gaze piercing. "Last chance, Suzanne. Drop it or I'll make sure you and your little friend regret it." Suzanne's fists clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "Get out, Mark. This isn't your call." Mark chuckled, unfazed, and left, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Suzanne turned to Hannah, her mind racing. "He's not bluffing. We need to move fast. Get these documents to someone we trust." Hannah nodded, but her hands trembled. "Who? Lawson?" Suzanne hesitated. Thomas Lawson had backed her, but Mark's influence at the firm was strong. "Not yet," she said. "We need an outside ally, someone untouchable." The next morning, Susan contacted a journalist she'd met on a previous case, Rachel Nguyen, known for exposing corporate corruption. Over coffee, Susan shared the outlines of the scandal, keeping names vague. Rachel's eyes gleamed. "If you've got evidence, I can get this in front of the right people, FBI, state prosecutors, but you'll need airtight proof and you'll be a target." "I know," Suzanne said, her resolve hardening. "I'm ready." Back at the office, Suzanne noticed subtle changes, files on her desk rearranged, her computer logged out. Someone was tampering with her work. She confronted Thomas, who looked troubled. "Mark's been asking questions about you," he admitted. "He's got friends at Midland. Be careful, Suzanne." The warning confirmed her fears. Mark was the traitor. But a bigger shock came that afternoon when Hannah burst into her office, her face ashen. "Suzanne, I found Lisa Harper," she said, handing over a private investigator's report. "She's alive, living in Evanston just outside Chicago. But there's more. She filed a complaint against Reynolds and Clark in 1993, claiming coercion in the adoption. It was buried." Suzanne's heart pounded. Lisa had fought back, only to be silenced. "We need to talk to her," Suzanne said. "She could testify." Hannah hesitated. "There's a catch. The PI says she's under surveillance, unmarked cars, phone taps. Someone's keeping tabs on her." The plot twist hit hard. Lisa wasn't just a victim. She was a loose end someone wanted controlled. Suzanne's mind raced. Midland, Robert, or Mark. The net was tightening, and Suzanne was running out of time. She had to protect Lisa, expose the truth, and stay one step ahead of her enemies. But as she prepared to reach out to Lisa, a new email arrived, this time with a photo. Suzanne leaving the cafe with Rachel, captioned, "You were warned." The message was clear. Her every move was being watched, and the cost of justice was rising. Suzanne Reynolds gripped her phone, the anonymous email's photo, her meeting with journalist Rachel Nguyen searing into her mind. "You were warned." The words echoed as Chicago's skyline loomed outside her office at Lawson and Pierce, its lights a stark reminder of the eyes watching her every move. At 32, Suzanne was no stranger to high-stakes cases, but this was a labyrinth of betrayal and corruption. Her adoption, tied to a decades-old scheme at Reynolds and Clark, wasn't just personal. It was a scandal that could topple her family's legacy and Midland enterprises. With her biological mother, Lisa Harper, under surveillance and Mark Donovan's threats looming, Suzanne knew time was running out. The documents Hannah Pierce had uncovered, a 1993 letter, financial memos, and a buried complaint from Lisa, painted a damning picture. Reynolds and Clark, led by her father, Robert Reynolds, had facilitated illegal adoptions, laundering payments through Harper Consulting with Midland's backing. Judge Margaret Ellis's signatures sealed the deals, and Mark's warnings suggested he was protecting the scheme. But the photo meant someone closer was leaking her moves. Suzanne's trust, already battered, hung by a thread. She met Hannah in a secluded park near Lake Michigan, the wind whipping through the trees. Hannah's face was drawn, her usual spark dimmed. "I reached out to Lisa Harper," Hannah whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "She's scared but willing to talk. She's at a safe house in Evanston. Rachel Nguyen arranged it. But Suzanne, the surveillance on her is tight. Midland's hired muscle, maybe even cops on their payroll." Suzanne's stomach churned. Lisa's courage could be the key to exposing the truth. But it came at a cost. "We need her testimony," Suzanne said, her voice firm. "If she can confirm the coercion, we can build a case against Reynolds and Clark and Midland, but we have to protect her." Hannah nodded, handing over a USB drive. "Copies of everything. Documents, Lisa's complaint, even Klein's old whistleblower notes. If something happens to us, Rachel has instructions to publish." The weight of the drive grounded Suzanne, but the fear of betrayal lingered. Mark Donovan's smirk, Lucas's taunts, even Thomas Lawson's vague warnings, everyone was a suspect. She needed to confront Lisa, but first, she had to neutralize the immediate threat. Mark's role was too murky to ignore. Back at Lawson and Pierce, Suzanne cornered Mark in his office, closing the door behind her. His polished charm faltered as she leaned in, her voice low. "I know you're working with Midland," she said, holding up the ledger photo. "You sent the threats, didn't you? Trying to scare me off." Mark's eyes narrowed, but he leaned back, feigning calm. "You're paranoid, Suzanne. I'm just looking out for the firm. You're poking a hornet's nest, and it'll sting." "Cut the act," Suzanne snapped. "I've got proof, payments, sealed cases, Lisa's complaint. If you're involved, come clean now, or I'll drag you down with them." Mark's facade cracked, his voice dropping. "You think you're untouchable? Midland owns half this city. Your father knew it, Lucas knows it, and I'm just playing the game. Back off, or you'll end up like Klein, alone and broken." The admission was enough. Suzanne recorded it on her phone, hidden in her pocket. "Thanks for the confession," she said, stepping back. "This goes to the FBI unless you help me." Mark's face paled, but before he could respond, Suzanne's phone buzzed. It was Rachel. Lisa's safe house compromised. "Get here now!" Panic surged through Suzanne. She bolted from the office, texting Hannah to meet her in Evanston. The drive was a blur, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Had Mark tipped someone off? Or was the leak closer? At the safe house, a modest bungalow tucked behind pines, Suzanne found Rachel and Lisa Harper. Lisa was in her 50s, her face lined with hardship, her eyes haunted but resolute. "They forced me," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "Midland paid me to give you up. Said it was for your safety. Reynolds and Clark handled everything. Threatened to ruin me if I talked." Suzanne's heart ached, but her lawyer's instincts took over. "Will you testify?" she asked gently. "We can protect you. Get justice." Lisa hesitated, then nodded. "For you, I will." As they planned, Hannah burst in, breathless. Suzanne, we've got a problem. I traced the email with the photo. It came from Lawson's private server. Thomas is involved. The betrayal hit like a freight train. Thomas Lawson, her mentor, the man who'd championed her career, was part of the conspiracy. Suzanne's world tilted, but she forced herself to focus. "He's been playing us," she said, her voice hollow, "feeding us just enough to keep us chasing our tails." Rachel's eyes hardened. "We go public now. FBI, prosecutors, the works. I've got a contact ready to move." But the plot twisted again. A black SUV screeched to a stop outside, and Lucas stepped out, flanked by two men in suits. Suzanne's blood ran cold. "Stay here," she told Lisa, stepping onto the porch with Hannah and Rachel. Lucas's smirk was gone, replaced by desperation. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you?" Lucas said, his voice tight. "Dad's ready to cut a deal. Step back, and we'll make this right. Keep pushing, and you'll destroy us all." Suzanne's fists clenched, memories of Elizabeth's warmth battling her anger. "You covered up a crime, Lucas. People got hurt. Lisa, me, others. I'm not stopping." Lucas's face darkened, but one of his men whispered something, and he backed off, climbing into the SUV. As it sped away, Suzanne knew this was her last chance. Thomas's betrayal meant Lawson and Pierce wasn't safe. She had to act before Midland's reach silenced them. That night, Suzanne and Rachel drafted a formal complaint, backed by the documents and Lisa's affidavit. Hannah worked feverishly, encrypting backups. But as Suzanne prepared to deliver the evidence to Rachel's FBI contact, a new message arrived. "You can't hide. We know where Lisa is." Attached was a live feed. Lisa, alone in the safe house, unaware of a shadow moving outside her window. Suzanne's heart stopped. The enemy was one step ahead, and Lisa's life hung in the balance. With Thomas exposed and Lucas closing in, Suzanne faced an impossible choice. Save Lisa and risk losing the evidence, or press forward and gamble with a stranger's life. The clock was ticking, and every decision could be her last. Suzanne Reynolds stood frozen in her Chicago apartment, the live feed on her phone showing a shadow creeping outside Lisa Harper's safe house. The message, "You can't hide. We know where Lisa is," was a dagger to her heart. Her biological mother, a woman she'd only just met, was in danger, and Suzanne's fight to expose a decades-old adoption scandal at Reynolds and Clark had reached a breaking point. At 32, Suzanne had built her career on precision and courage, but now, with her mentor Thomas Lawson revealed as a traitor and her brother Lucas closing in, every choice felt like a gamble with lives on the line. The evidence, documents, Lisa's affidavit, and Mark Donovan's recorded confession sat encrypted on a USB drive, ready for Rachel Nguyen's FBI contact. But saving Lisa meant delaying the handover, risking Midland Enterprises' reach. Suzanne's mind raced, her adoptive mother Elizabeth's voice echoing, "Do what's right, even when it's hard." She dialed Rachel. "Lisa's in danger," Suzanne said, her voice steady despite the panic. "Send your contact to the safe house, now! I'm heading there!" Rachel's voice was urgent. "Suzanne, if you go, you're walking into a trap. Let the FBI handle it." "No time," Suzanne replied, grabbing her coat. "Keep the evidence safe. If I don't make it, publish everything." She texted Hannah Pierce. "Get to the safe house. Bring backup." Hannah's loyalty was her last lifeline, but doubt lingered. Could anyone be fully trusted? The drive to Evanston was a blur, Chicago's lights streaking past as Suzanne's heart pounded. At the safe house, she found Lisa barricaded inside, her face pale but resolute. "They're outside," Lisa whispered, clutching a kitchen knife. "2 men, maybe more." Suzanne scanned the windows, spotting movement in the shadows. "Stay low," she said, dialing 911 and reporting an active threat. As she spoke, Hannah arrived with a private security guard she'd hired. A bold move for a junior lawyer. "FBI's 10 minutes out," Hannah said, her voice tense. "We hold them off." The standoff was agonizing, every creak amplifying the tension. Then, a knock at the door. Suzanne peered through the peephole, her breath catching. It was Robert Reynolds, her father, alone, his face etched with exhaustion. "Suzanne, let me in," he called, his voice raw. "I'm here to end this." Against her instincts, Suzanne opened the door, keeping Lisa behind her. Robert stepped inside, hands raised. "I didn't want this," he said, his eyes glassy. "Midland pressured me, said the adoptions were for good families. I was blind, Suzanne. Lucas took it too far, and Lawson, he's been their puppet." Suzanne's chest tightened, torn between anger and pity. "You lied to me my whole life," she said, her voice shaking. "You broke the law, hurt people like Lisa. Why should I believe you now?" Before Robert could answer, tires screeched outside. Lucas burst in, flanked by a Midland enforcer. "Enough games," Lucas snarled, his charm replaced by desperation. "Hand over the evidence, Suzanne, or this gets ugly." The room froze, but Suzanne's resolve hardened. "You're done, Lucas," she said, holding up her phone, live streaming to Rachel's secure server. "Everything's already with the FBI. You can't bury this." Lucas lunged, but the security guard tackled him, pinning him down. Sirens wailed, and FBI agents stormed in, cuffing Lucas and his enforcer. Robert stood silent, his shoulders sagging as an agent approached. "Mr. Reynolds, you're coming with us," the agent said. Robert nodded, glancing at Suzanne with a look of regret that cut deeper than words. As the chaos settled, Lisa gripped Suzanne's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You gave me my voice back." Suzanne nodded, her throat tight. She'd saved Lisa, but the cost was her family's legacy. The next week was a whirlwind. Rachel's expose hit the press, detailing Reynolds and Clark's adoption scheme, backed by Suzanne's evidence. Midland's CEO, Victor Grayson, faced federal charges, and Judge Ellis resigned amid scrutiny. Lucas was disbarred, his arrogance shattered. Robert cooperated with prosecutors, taking a plea deal that spared him prison but ended his career. Reynolds and Clark teetered on collapse, its reputation in ruins. Suzanne, now a partner at Lawson and Pierce, took on a new role, reforming the firm's remnants to prioritize ethical practice, honoring Elizabeth's values. Mark Donovan, exposed by his confession, was quietly let go, his influence erased. Thomas Lawson's betrayal stung, but his arrest for collusion with Midland closed that chapter. One evening, Suzanne met Lisa for coffee, their first real conversation. "I don't know if I can be your daughter," Suzanne admitted, her voice soft, "but I'm glad you're safe." Lisa smiled, tears in her eyes. "You're enough just as you are. That's all I ever wanted." Back at her apartment, Suzanne found a letter slipped under her door. No sender, just a single page. It was from Robert, written before his plea. "Suzanne, I failed you, but you've made me proud. You're the best of us. Keep fighting." A final twist. A small key taped to the letter, unlocking a safe deposit box. Inside, Suzanne later discovered, were Elizabeth's journals, filled with love for her daughter and dreams of a just world. Suzanne closed the box, her heart full. She'd lost her family but found her truth, reshaping a tainted legacy into something honest. The fight had cost her, but standing in the glow of Chicago's skyline, she knew she'd won, not just justice, but herself.